There are places in the world that seem to pulse on a different frequency, where the veil between our sky and the unknown is thinner. They are geographic portals of mystery, and one of them has been officially recognized. Imagine a city that doesn't just accumulate UFO reports, but embraces this identity to the point of being crowned the UFO capital of a nation. That city is La Serena in Chile. Today, we won't just tell one story. We will open a file of events that intertwine across time and space, connected by anomalous lights, enigmatic beings, and the frightening realization that we are not alone. From the deserted road that became the stage for a third-kind encounter, to the soldier who disappeared for 15 minutes and returned with a grown beard, prepare to decipher the secrets kept in the arid, starry skies of Chile. The commune of La Serena, the second oldest city in Chile, is known for its beaches and historic architecture, a magnet for tourists during the summer. But beneath this facade of normality, an anomalous heart beats. The Coquimbo region, where it sits, has solidified itself over decades as one of the most important UFO hotspots in Latin America. The volume and consistency of the sightings are so impressive that on June 24, 2002, the title became official. La Serena was declared the UFO capital of Chile. But this declaration was not born from chance. It was forged from profound human experiences, events that defied logic and forever marked the lives of their witnesses. To understand the soul of this place, we need to go back in time, to a cold night in 1966, in a rural area called Los Morros. On May 31, 1966, life was proceeding as usual for a group of 20 employees from the National Health Service. Their mission was simple: drill a well for drinking water at a school in the remote and arid Los Morros, about 100 miles from the center of La Serena. Among them were Manuel Moons, the driver, and Luis Marim, the specialist in charge of water quality. What should have been just another day of work turned into a nightmare for Manuel. A sudden and overwhelming illness took hold of him, and as night fell, his condition became critical. Far from any medical help, Luis made the only possible decision: to take his colleague to the nearest hospital in the village of Incanuzi, a long and winding 43 miles away. The journey there was tense, a race against time and the darkness. They only managed to get medical attention in the early hours of June 1st. Hours later, with Manuel medicated but still weak, they began the journey back. The scenery was one of solitary beauty. The full moon bathed the road in a pale light. The sky was clear, without clouds, and the wind was almost a caress. But the road, full of curves and steep inclines, demanded full attention. In a stretch known as Tres Cruces, the first sign that this night would be no ordinary one tore across the sky. An elongated sphere of fire crossed the vehicle's path and disintegrated in the air. A meteor, they thought, a shooting star, and they moved on. However, a mile later, reality began to warp. A purplish light, pulsating to an orange hue, hovered over the road. The first impression was of a truck, but the sound emanating from it was alien, a noise that didn't belong to any known engine. As they got closer, the shape became defined. It was not a terrestrial vehicle. It was an immense flying object suspended in the silence of the dawn. With the arrival of the first rays of sun, the details became frighteningly clear. It was a metallic object, ovoid and elongated in shape. On its upper part, a cabin with windows stood out, along with two long rods that projected like antennas. 6 protrusions on its edges emitted beams of light that switched between yellowish-orange and purple every 30 seconds. The object approached so close that its light flooded the car's interior, turning the small space into a capsule of unreality. And then the cosmic spectacle expanded. As they passed a ravine, they saw 6 other identical, though smaller, objects, stationary, as if awaiting a command. The command came. The larger ship fired a beam of light toward the group. Instantly, like a flock of mechanical birds, the smaller objects dispersed in perfect sync. 2 to the north, 2 to the south, and 2 to the east. The message, whatever it was, had been delivered and understood. At 7:30 a.m., Manuel and Luis arrived at the camp, no longer as mere co-workers, but as bearers of an impossible story. In desperation, they shouted for the others to come out. 5 employees, including Marino Mondaca and Ricardo Leiva, ran outside just in time to witness the final act. The immense object still hovered nearby, before ascending at a dizzying speed and dissolving into the sunlight, leaving behind only a trail of purple light and 20 men forever changed.
The story of the Los Moros sighting was not contained within the desert. It spread like wildfire, first through the community, then through the local media. The fact that there were multiple witnesses besides the 2 main ones gave the account an undeniable weight. 7 months later, science decided to intervene. Dr. Darwin Arriagata, director of the National Health Service and a man who would become one of the pioneers of Chilean ufology, proposed a bold step: to subject Manuel and Luis to regressive hypnosis. The objective was clear: to confirm the story and, perhaps, unlock memories that trauma had sealed away. Manuel was first. Under hypnosis, he revisited the winding road, the blinding light, and then a terrifying memory emerged. He recalled that Luis stopped the car. The object descended, almost touching the ground. A door opened and 3 beings emerged. The description he provided would become an archetype of the phenomenon. They were humanoids, around 4 feet tall and extremely thin. Their heads were disproportionately large, with enormous dark eyes. They had no hair, and their skin had a slightly greenish tone. They wore suits that covered their entire bodies except for their heads and limbs. Their hands and feet were thin, with long, delicate fingers, and their chests were prominent. The creatures, according to Manuel's memory, walked around the car, observing. Under hypnosis, he also understood the source of the paralyzing fear that had haunted him for months, a terror whose source his conscious mind refused to access. When it was Luis's turn, the puzzle gained another piece. He also remembered stopping the car and the object hovering in front of him. But in his memory, the beings did not leave the craft. He saw them through the cabin windows, 3 figures with the same appearance described by Manuel, watching him from within that technological apparatus. The divergence in details did not weaken the case. On the contrary, it gave it a fascinating psychological complexity. It was the first UFO case in Chile to use regressive hypnosis as an investigative tool, opening a new and controversial chapter in the search for truth. The Los Moros anomaly was not an isolated event. 11 years later, in April 1977, the Chilean desert would become the stage for one of the most baffling and well-documented cases in military ufology, the enigma of Corporal Armando Valdez. In the desolate Pampa Luscuma, a strategic region near the border with Bolivia, Valdez and a patrol of 7 soldiers from the Huamachuco regiment were on a mission. The official version spoke of investigating a fire, but the truth was that the military presence there was constant and secretive. In the early hours of April 25th, the routine was broken. A soldier on watch ran to the camp, terrified. He had seen something. Valdez, a disciplined 23-year-old leader, initially skeptical, went to investigate. What they saw paralyzed them all. 2 intense lights descended from the heavens. One of them, oval-shaped and about 65 feet across, hovered about 600 yards away, emitting an almost unbearable glow. This was not natural. It was a machine. The fear became palpable. The soldiers, men trained for combat, clung to one another. Some prayed, others cried. The horses and cattle in the area panicked, their eyes fixed on the light. And then the inexplicable happened. Corporal Valdez, as if in a trance, began to walk alone toward the light. His men, paralyzed by fear and the strange energy that filled the air, couldn't stop him. He walked until he was swallowed by the luminosity and simply vanished. For 15 long, desperate minutes, there was no sign of him. Suddenly, he reappeared at the same spot. But he was not the same man. He was confused, disoriented, and his beard, which he had shaved that morning, was visibly grown. His wristwatch had stopped, but its digital calendar showed a date 5 days in the future. Before fainting, he uttered an enigmatic phrase, as if channeling another voice. "You don't know who we are or where we come from, but know this, we will be back." The Chilean army acted swiftly and ruthlessly to cover up the case. Valdez and his men were isolated. The corporal was subjected to a battery of medical and psychological exams, and according to some sources, even electroshock therapy, in a possible attempt to erase his memories. For years, he was forbidden to speak. Only after his retirement did he reveal fragments of what he experienced, mentioning hypnotic regressions where he saw the planet's future and beings in white helmets. He claimed that for him, the 15 minutes of absence were in fact 5 days. Years later, after becoming an evangelical pastor, he would deny everything, a retraction many attribute to a desire for peace and the burden of carrying such an extraordinary truth. However, the other 7 soldiers never changed their stories. The case of Corporal Valdez remains an open wound in the history of ufology, a powerful testament to the relativity of time and the fragility of our understanding.
The cases of Los Moros and Corporal Valdez are the pillars of the Chilean mystery, but the city of La Serena continues to be a stage for the bizarre. The reports accumulate, painting a picture of a region where the impossible is almost routine. In the summer of 1987, Carlos Manuel Arancibia witnessed, along with a group of drivers, a scene from a nightmare. At the top of a light post, a large creature with humanoid features and immense wings emitted a shrill cry that caused widespread panic. That same night, another family on a nearby road saw a black shadow descend from the sky, thinking it was a piece of plastic. As they approached, the shadow opened its gigantic wings and took flight, revealing the same winged creature.
Decades later, the phenomenon changed its form. On the night of December 31st, 2014, the sky over La Serena was visited again. This time, 10 experienced pilots aboard 5 different civilian aircraft independently reported the same sight: an intense white light with 2 tails moving in an upward trajectory. The object was not detected by any control tower radar, and there was no registered air traffic in the area. The official explanation suggested the launch of a Chinese satellite, but for the pilots who saw it with their own eyes, that explanation was never satisfactory. From winged creatures to silent craft, La Serena seems to be a convergence point for different manifestations of the same profound mystery.
Faced with an avalanche of such consistent evidence and reports, Chile adopted a unique stance in the world. Instead of denying, it decided to investigate. The country created CEFAA, the Committee for the Study of Anomalous Aerial Phenomena, an official body linked to civil aeronautics dedicated to scientifically analyzing these events. The existence of a government entity to study UFOs is proof of the country's commitment to treating the subject with the seriousness it deserves. And La Serena, as the epicenter, embraced its destiny. The city now hosts the first UFO museum in Chile, a space that gathers declassified documents, photos, and reports. The government went even further, creating the UFO Trail in San Clemente, a 19-mile route that crosses areas with a high incidence of sightings, inviting the curious to look up. La Serena doesn't hide its mysteries. It showcases them, studies them, and transforms them into a permanent invitation for exploration.
What makes the skies of La Serena and the Atacama Desert so special? Could it be the atmospheric clarity, which allows for a privileged view? Could it be a magnetic anomaly, a kind of portal to other realities? Or could it be the stories passed down from generation to generation that have taught us to look up with more attention? The accounts we've explored today are fragments of a much larger mosaic. They tell us about technology, about beings from other worlds, but above all, they tell us about the human experience when faced with the incomprehensible. The fear, the courage, the confusion, and the relentless search for answers. Is there one piece of this puzzle that, for you, is the key to it all? The regressive hypnosis, Corporal Valdez's lost time, or the persistence of sightings over the decades? Leave your theory in the comments, as every perspective helps us to shed a little more light on this enigma. So that Alien Cases can continue producing this content for our community, so passionate about these intriguing mysteries, we are working towards hitting our first goals here on YouTube. That's why I'm counting on every single one of you watching. Besides leaving a like, which helps us out immensely, gaining another subscriber is the most important step right now. Our first big challenge is to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your click on the subscribe button is a simple, free gesture that will have immense value for us. We want to thank you in advance for joining our crew.